Hello, my name is Sam and I'm going to be showing you my process for drawing dog portraits. I'm going to show you my supplies real quick before we get into it. So the paper I use for my dog portraits is this mixed media Canson 11 by 14, and generally the size I choose to do is 8 by 10, and I just trim down this paper. I like having a little extra just in case I need to make marks or something on the side. And I use Copic markers. I have this right here plus pretty much a bag full of refills, and I just spilled that. Okay, so we're just gonna jump right in. This is my drawing after about probably 5-10 minutes of drawing. My camera didn't start right away, so this is what you got. And as you can see, I already have a pencil sketch before I go in with markers, and that's just so I can make sure all the proportions are correct. And there are two ways I normally do this. I either freehand it and look at a picture and just draw it, or I print out a picture at the size I want it, in this case 8 inches by 10 inches, and I take a light table and trace it. I generally go with the second option just because it is so much more efficient, and because I know it's within my skill set to be able to draw it freehand. And because you're tracing the actual photo, you're going to get those proportions almost exact, and that just adds for a greater likeness to the pet. Anyway, this video is sped up to about 400%. I think the entire thing from sketching to finishing the drawing took me about 3 hours, I'd say. And I've gotten a lot quicker with drawing these. In the beginning, it could take me anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, I'd say. And it also depends on the color of the dog and the size of the picture, obviously. Generally, black dogs take me a lot longer because it's all those different gray values you have to get right. Something I noticed during this drawing was that I couldn't really find a color I liked to cover the whole thing. I think a part of the reason it was so hard for me to find the correct color during this portrait was because the face was a little blown out, so it was almost showing as completely white to me. And the other thing was that since the back of the body was in shadow, it was almost completely gray. And I think a big issue that people normally have is that they don't use enough gray values when doing marker drawings, because they think since it's a tan dog, they're going to use a darker tan color, but you really have to teach yourself how to see color. I generally like to blur my eyes and zoom in really close if I'm on my phone or computer or something looking at a photo, and just try to nail down what that color actually is. So in most of this drawing, I'm using warm gray colors. I think I actually go the full range. I have the even numbers of the gray values, so W2 to W10. And I use those gray values kind of in place of my blacks, where some people would think to use blacks. I'm either using those gray values or a complementary color. So if you look at the color wheel, whichever color is your main focus, so if I'm drawing this yellow dog, I would look at the other side of the color wheel, and that would be a purple color, and I would use that as my darkest shadow. For these next few minutes, I have sped it up to about 600%, just because this part isn't terribly interesting. I'm just kind of filling in the body. And during this portion, while I am filling in the body, I keep things light, and after I get a look of what the whole thing looks like filled in, I generally find where I think it needs to be darker and go back in with those darker shadows, and it allows it to pop a little bit more. You'll see that a little bit later in the video. Another thing that I always make sure to do during all my drawings is have a piece of paper next to my drawing, and I always make sure it's the same paper type that I'm drawing on, because if you have, say, a piece of copy paper next to your drawing when I'm drawing on this mixed media paper, the colors are going to be very different than how they're going to show up on this paper. And 2 reasons you want to do this. 1, so you make sure you're not choosing the wrong color, and 2, so you can see how different markers will layer on top of each other. Because these are alcohol-based markers, they blend together, and that's the main advantage of using these, but there are also some color combinations that just don't really work well. So right here I've slowed it down to real time just to give you an idea of how slow this actually is. You can see me making really small movements and then pausing after each one of them, and that's just because I'm taking a look at the photo and making sure each of these marks are intentional. You should really be looking at the photo reference that you're drawing from more than you're looking at the actual drawing. And that's just so we're not using our imagination, we're drawing from the reality, and that just helps with the overall likeness at the end. So as you can see, this is where it kind of starts really coming together. I'm putting lots of different tones into that background, and I think it really helps with bringing those yellow tones out from the dog. And unfortunately, this was about the end of how much I got to record. For some reason, my camera wasn't working, but I did manage to get one photo of the completed picture, and that is right here. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and feel free to check out my other videos. Thanks.